Ashwini Nakshatra, cognitive subconscious patterns. Some people move through life with an urgency that others struggle to keep up with. They don't pause, they don't overthink, they act, they initiate, they lead. Ashwini Nakshatra isn't about slow deliberation. It's about instinct, speed, and decisive movement. Their subconscious processing is wired for rapid response. And if we break it down through NLP cognitive styles, we can see exactly how they absorb, interpret, and react to the world around them. If their mind is visual dominant, they don't process life through words, but through mental snapshots and rapid imagery. They see the path ahead before others even recognize there's a road to take. Their decision-making is quick because their brain works like a high-speed film reel, running possible outcomes in an instant and selecting the best course of action. If they can't visualize something, they struggle to engage with it. Abstract theories, slow-paced discussions, they'd rather move on to something tangible, something they can act on now. If Mercury plays a strong role, their mind becomes auditory-driven, meaning they process through sound, rhythm, and fast verbal cues. Ever noticed how some people finish your sentences before you do? That's Ashwini with an auditory tilt. They hear, process, and respond before most people have even structured their thoughts. Instructions need to be sharp, clear, and quick. Long-winded explanations bore them. They speak in short, impactful bursts, always cutting straight to the point, often leaving slower communicators struggling to keep up. But if Mars dominates their processing, then their body is their mind. They don't just think, they move. Physical action becomes their way of learning and understanding. Sitting in a chair and absorbing information doesn't work for them. They need hands-on engagement, high-energy activities, real-world application. They are the ones who will walk while thinking, tap their fingers when restless, and jump into action without hesitation. If they don't move, they feel stuck, not just physically, but mentally. Now, if Saturn or Jupiter influences their cognition, their decision-making becomes more structured and analytical. This is where their natural impulsiveness collides with logic. Their instinct says, go now, but their logical processing urges them to pause, assess, and strategize. This creates an internal push and pull. Do they trust their gut or do they wait? If they learn to balance both instincts and structured thinking, they become unstoppable decision makers, capable of both speed and precision. Ashwini operates on fast-forward mode, often frustrated by the slowness of others. They think, act, and move at a different speed than most. And the challenge isn't in slowing down, but in directing that energy with precision. Their subconscious mind is built for momentum, for taking the first step while others hesitate, for seeing and doing before the rest of the world catches up. When they trust this, they become pioneers, leaders, and unstoppable forces of action. Always ahead of the curve, always driven by a force that refuses to wait. Ashwini Nakshatra motivation and attention direction filters. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to move without hesitation, as if their motivation comes from an unseen force? Ashwini Nakshatra is not about slow analysis or careful planning. It's about speed, instinct, and action. But what drives them? Motivation direction filters determine whether they move toward a goal or away from discomfort, while attention direction filters shape where they focus, on the past, present, or future. If we overlay these filters with planetary placements, the subconscious workings of Ashwini become even more fascinating. If Mars is placed in the first house in Ashwini, their motivation is purely toward-oriented. They see a challenge and charge ahead, driven by competition, personal ambition, and the thrill of being first. But if Mars is in the 7th house, their motivation becomes externally reactive. They thrive on outperforming competitors, proving doubters wrong, or responding to external obstacles. If you've ever seen someone who gets fired up the moment they feel underestimated, this is exactly how Mars in the 7th house plays out. Now, if Saturn sits in Ashwini in the 1st house, their motivation gets a deliberate, structured overlay. They still desire movement, but they pace themselves, ensuring that every action builds toward a long-term outcome. If Saturn is in the 7th, however, they become highly aware of how others perceive them, using strategy and control to maneuver social and professional relationships. Their progress is still rapid, but measured, less reckless fire, more calculated steps toward an inevitable victory. Where is their attention directed? If Mercury is placed in the first house, their mind is always in the future, anticipating, analyzing, strategizing the next move. They process quickly, think on their feet, and thrive in fast-paced environments where information is constantly shifting. If Mercury is in the seventh, however, their attention becomes more externally driven, focusing on how others react, what people think, and how to navigate conversations and negotiations to their advantage. Their strength lies in reading situations, adapting rapidly, and always staying 2 steps ahead in social dynamics. But what happens when Rahu is in Ashwini? Their attention becomes hyper-fixated on the future, but in an almost obsessive way. They want everything faster, bigger, better. They chase ambitions that others wouldn't dare dream of, often taking risks that defy logic. If Rahu is placed in the 10th house, this drive manifests in their career, making them unrelenting in their pursuit of power, status, and recognition. If Rahu lands in the 4th house, their ambition shifts toward breaking free from family expectations or redefining their sense of home and emotional security. And what if Ketu is placed in Ashwini? Now their attention takes a different route: detachment from the present, a deep connection to subconscious instincts, and an almost effortless ability to act without overthinking. In the 1st house, this makes them extremely intuitive, fast-moving, but uninterested in conventional success. They don't chase things for validation. They move because they simply know they should. If Ketu lands in the 7th house, they may be unconcerned with external relationships, often pulling away from commitments or feeling disconnected from public perception, focusing instead on an internal, self-driven path. Ashwini's true strength lies in knowing how to balance their instinctive action with awareness. Whether their motivation comes from the thrill of the chase or the urgency to escape stagnation, whether their attention is locked on the future or guided by unseen intuition, they are always 1 step ahead, moving before the world even realizes. Ashwini Nakshatra, understanding chunk size. Have you ever met someone who grasps the essence of a situation instantly, but grows impatient when forced to sift through too many details? That's Ashwini Nakshatra in action. Fast, instinctive, and eager to move forward. The way a person absorbs, processes, and organizes information, whether in broad concepts or intricate details, is known as their chunk size in NLP. If we map this to planetary placements in Ashwini, we can see how different influences shape whether they prefer big-picture thinking or fine-grained analysis. If Jupiter is placed in the 3rd house in Ashwini, their mind processes information in large conceptual blocks rather than individual steps. They may not focus on every technical aspect of learning, but immediately extract the key theme or larger idea behind a concept. You'll notice this in how they explain things. They summarize, give the essence, and move on. If Jupiter is in the 9th house, this expands even further. They become deeply philosophical, absorbing abstract theories and grand visions rather than focusing on practical details. They are drawn to higher wisdom, skipping minor facts in favor of universal truths. If Mercury is placed in the 6th house in Ashwini, the processing style becomes more detail-oriented, breaking down information into smaller, digestible parts. Unlike Jupiter, Mercury loves structure, lists, and sequential thinking, making them efficient problem solvers. But if Mercury shifts to the 12th house, chunk size processing becomes more fluid. Thoughts blend together, ideas connect in nonlinear ways, and they may process information intuitively rather than through logical step-by-step analysis. Now, let's look at Rahu in the 10th house in Ashwini. Here, chunk size expands dramatically in professional life. They are visionary thinkers, always looking at the big picture, the grand strategy, the massive career leap rather than daily work routines. They may delegate details, skip smaller steps, and focus on future potential rather than current processes. But if Rahu is placed in the 4th house, this expansion applies to family, emotional understanding, and inner security. They may struggle with grounding themselves in immediate emotional needs, instead thinking in broader terms about their family's legacy, generational patterns, and long-term psychological growth. What happens when K2 lands in the 8th house in Ashwini? The mind becomes extremely focused on patterns, hidden truths, and nonlinear understanding. They don't absorb information in structured pieces, but rather in deep, intuitive waves, often seeing the whole picture without knowing exactly how they got there. If K2 is in the 2nd house, this can manifest as a disinterest in breaking things down into financial or material concerns, making them see wealth, possessions, and speech as something transient rather than something requiring detailed attention. Ashwini operates best when given fast, high-impact information that aligns with their natural instinct for quick decision-making. If their planetary placements favor large chunk thinking, they thrive when focusing on visions, innovations, and broader strategies. If their chart leans towards small chunk processing, they become masters at fine details, precise execution, and structured problem solving. Either way, their strength is in speed, seeing what needs to be understood and moving forward before the world even catches up. Ashwini Nakshatra, frame of reference pattern. Have you ever met someone who makes decisions instantly without needing reassurance from others? Or someone who, no matter how confident they seem, still looks for external validation before committing to a choice? This difference in decision-making is shaped by the frame of reference pattern, whether someone is internally referenced, trusting their own judgment, or externally referenced, seeking confirmation, approval, or societal cues before making a decision. Ashwini Nakshatra, known for its instinctive, rapid decision-making, naturally leans toward internal referencing, but planetary placements in the 4th and 10th houses can shift how they process and validate their choices. If the sun is in the 4th house in Ashwini, decision-making becomes deeply internalized, shaped by their inner world, personal values, and emotional core, rather than external influences. They act based on what feels right to them, often tuning out public expectations. Their confidence is rooted in their personal experiences and upbringing, making them fiercely independent in their decision-making. But if the sun moves to the 10th house, the reference frame shifts outward. They start considering how their choices impact their public image, career, and authority. Their decisions are still self-driven, but they become aware of the social and professional consequences of their actions, making them more strategic and reputation conscious. If Venus is in the 4th house in Ashwini, their reference frame is internally emotional, meaning they make choices based on how something makes them feel rather than logical validation. They don't require external approval, but they seek inner balance, harmony, and personal fulfillment before making a move. They may be drawn to comfort, beauty, or emotionally resonant choices, acting based on how a decision aligns with their personal happiness. But if Venus is in the 10th house, their focus shifts outward. They start making decisions that enhance their social appeal, career influence, and public recognition. They still follow their instincts, but now they evaluate how their choices impact their relationships, reputation, and aesthetic presentation in the world. Now, if Rahu is placed in the 4th house in Ashwini, their decision-making becomes highly internalized but restless, meaning they rely on their own judgment, but also second-guess themselves frequently. They may feel an intense need to rebel against their upbringing or conditioning, leading to impulsive decisions that are driven by a desire for independence rather than external influence. But if Rahu, who is in the 10th house, the frame of reference becomes externally focused, making them obsessed with career success, public status, and societal validation. They may feel a strong compulsion to prove themselves to the world, constantly pushing for greater recognition, influence, and professional dominance. What happens when K2 lands in the 4th house in Ashwini? Their reference frame becomes internally detached, meaning they make decisions without emotional baggage or the need for validation. They trust their instincts completely, often acting without concern for tradition, societal expectations, or even personal consequences. Their choices may appear impulsive or detached, but they operate from an inner sense of knowing. If K2 is in the 10th house, their decision-making shifts to external detachment, They may rise in career or social status, but feel disconnected from ambition or public recognition. Unlike Rahu, which craves external success, Ketu disregards it, making them indifferent to authority, status, or validation from society. Ashwini's strength lies in their ability to move quickly, relying on gut instinct rather than overthinking. Whether they are internally referenced and trust their own impulses, or externally influenced and shaped by social factors, they will always be pioneers, acting first, leading the way, and shaping reality through action, rather than hesitation. Ashwini Nakshatra, action preference. Have you ever met someone who jumps into action before others have even processed what's happening? They don't sit back and analyze. They act first, think later. Ashwini Nakshatra thrives on motion, speed, and instinctive decision-making, but the way they prefer to take action, whether impulsive, calculated, structured, or exploratory, depends heavily on planetary placements and house positions. If Mars is placed in the 5th house in Ashwini, action becomes spontaneous, playful, and competitive. They are driven by passion, creativity, and the desire to express their dominance through risk-taking behaviors. Whether in sports, entrepreneurship, or creative fields, they don't wait for the right time. They take immediate action based on excitement and gut instinct. But if Mars moves to the 8th house, action becomes more strategic, secretive, and transformational. They don't act openly. They wait for the perfect moment to strike, ensuring maximum impact. Their moves may appear sudden, but they have been planned beneath the surface. If Saturn is in the 2nd house in Ashwini, action preference becomes deliberate and calculated. Unlike Mars-driven placements, Saturn in this house makes them patient with execution, but relentless in long-term achievement. They take careful, methodical steps, ensuring every move is sustainable. If Saturn is in the 11th house, action is structured around networking, influence, and systematic expansion. They won't act alone. They prefer to align themselves with power structures, making slow but steady progress toward their vision. If Mercury is in the 6th house in Ashwini, action is driven by logic, adaptability, and quick problem solving. They react fast, move dynamically, and prefer mental agility over brute force. In business or daily routines, they thrive in fast-changing environments where quick responses are needed. If Mercury moves to the 12th house, action becomes subtle, indirect, and psychologically driven. They may avoid direct confrontation, choosing instead to manipulate events behind the scenes or take action in ways that are not immediately visible to others. What happens when Rahu lands in the 9th house in Ashwini? Action becomes expansion-focused, boundary-breaking, and risk-heavy. They take giant leaps instead of careful steps, pushing into uncharted territories, foreign lands, radical philosophies, or unconventional career paths. They don't follow rules. They invent their own, taking action based on vision rather than existing structures. But if Rahu moves to the 3rd house, action becomes obsessively driven towards skill building, information gathering, and direct confrontation. They push limits through aggressive communication, constant learning, and the desire to master any field through relentless effort. Now, if Ketu is in the 7th house in Ashwini, action takes on a detached, instinctive quality. They don't overthink partnerships or negotiations. They act with an innate knowing, often withdrawing from commitments as soon as they've achieved their goal. If Ketu is in the 10th house, action becomes nonlinear, unpredictable, and detached from societal ambition. They may rise to high positions without consciously trying or take action without seeking recognition. Unlike Rahu, which craves external success, Ketu in Ashwini acts without attachment, often making moves that seem confusing to others but are internally clear to them. Ashwini's strength is in their instinctive ability to act before hesitation sets in. Whether they are impulsive warriors, calculated strategists, quick thinkers, or detached movers, their speed, confidence, and ability to initiate make them unstoppable forces. Their challenge? Learning when to pause, when to refine, and when their action needs to be sharpened for long-term impact. Ashwini Nakshatra, operational styles, options versus procedures. Have you ever noticed how some people thrive on variety, constantly shifting between different possibilities, while others prefer structured routines, following a clear step-by-step process. The way a person operates in the world, whether through flexible, open-ended choices or structured, methodical execution, comes down to their operational style in NLP. Ashwini Nakshatra is naturally fast-moving, instinctive, and action-oriented, but depending on planetary placements and house positions, their preference for options, flexibility, or procedures, step-by-step structures, can vary. If Jupiter is in the ninth house in Ashwini, they operate with a strong options-based mindset. They don't like rigid systems. They prefer expansion, freedom, and the ability to pivot when new ideas or opportunities arise. You'll see them bouncing between different projects, learning multiple things at once, and seeking adventure over strict discipline. They thrive in careers or lifestyles where they can explore, travel, and constantly reinvent themselves. If Jupiter is in the fourth house, however, this options-driven mindset becomes emotionally or spiritually focused. They are constantly exploring different belief systems, changing homes or family structures, or shifting perspectives on personal security. If Saturn is in the 10th house in Ashwini, the operational style leans heavily toward procedures. These individuals succeed when they follow structured plans, long-term roadmaps, and step-by-step growth strategies. They don't rush into things like the typical Ashwini energy would suggest. They build carefully, ensuring that each move is strategic and contributes to a larger vision. But if Saturn moves to the third house, this structured style applies to communication, skill building, and intellectual efforts. They learn systematically, develop expertise through practice, and prefer a methodical approach to mastering new subjects, rather than jumping from one skill to another. If Mercury is placed in the 7th house in Ashwini, operational preferences become highly options-oriented, especially in relationships and business dealings. They love variety, adaptability, and the ability to shift between different perspectives. They don't lock into one rigid way of handling partnerships. They constantly assess possibilities, explore new angles, and shift their approach based on what's most effective in the moment. If Mercury is placed in the 2nd house, however, they become procedural in matters of finance, speech, and knowledge acquisition. They prefer structured learning, financial planning, and communication that follows logical steps rather than spontaneous bursts. Now, if Rahu is in the 5th house in Ashwini, operational style becomes highly options-driven, creative, and risk-taking. They thrive in environments where they can explore different creative projects, take risks, and experiment with unconventional approaches. They resist systems that feel restrictive, preferring to operate in multiple directions at once. If Rahu shifts to the 6th house, however, their approach becomes more procedural in work, discipline, and problem-solving. They become obsessed with structuring their routines, mastering systems, and organizing their life through structured workflows. If Ketu is in the 12th house in Ashwini, operational style becomes detached and intuitive, flowing between both options and procedures depending on what feels right at the moment. They don't consciously follow a method. They act based on instinct, moving between different paths without attachment to a particular structure. But if Ketu is in the 8th house, their procedural style becomes hidden, deeply investigative, and focused on unraveling mysteries through nonlinear processes. They don't follow conventional steps, but they do have an internal process of discovery that guides them through life's transformations. Ashwini Nakshatra's natural instinct is to act fast, but whether they thrive in structured environments or need constant flexibility depends on planetary placements. Some Ashwini natives will jump from one possibility to another, fueled by the thrill of new experiences, while others will follow a carefully crafted plan, ensuring steady long-term success. The key is knowing when to embrace their spontaneous nature and when to refine it into a powerful, structured force for lasting impact. Ashwini Nakshatra, views general or specific. Have you ever met someone who sees the big picture instantly but overlooks the finer details? Or someone who gets so lost in specifics that they miss the overall vision? The way a person processes information, Whether they focus on broad concepts or intricate details comes down to their view pattern. Ashwini Nakshatra is naturally fast-thinking, instinctive, and action-oriented. But planetary placements in different houses can determine whether their perspective is general, macro level, or specific, micro level. If Jupiter is in the 11th house in Ashwini, their view is expansive, futuristic, and visionary. They focus on bigger goals, large-scale networks, and societal impact rather than personal details. They don't get caught up in small setbacks because their mind is always looking at long-term success and broad possibilities. But if Jupiter is in the 3rd house, the focus shifts to smaller, immediate pieces of knowledge, skill acquisition, and precise communication. They might become deeply engrossed in specific intellectual pursuits rather than overarching philosophies. If Mercury is in the 6th house in Ashwini, their mind becomes hyper-focused on details, processes, and minute observations. They thrive in data-heavy, analytical fields, where breaking things down into precise steps is necessary. However, if Mercury is in the 9th house, their approach becomes generalized and idea-driven. They are more concerned with overarching beliefs, concepts, and intellectual expansion rather than technical precision. If Rahu is in the 1st house in Ashwini, their perception becomes macro-focused, driven by ambition, innovation, and unconventional thinking. They don't care about small day-to-day matters. They want to disrupt, reshape, and revolutionize their world. But if Rahu is in the 7th house, their attention shifts to detailed relationship dynamics, strategic social interactions, and the nuances of partnerships, making them more attuned to specific interpersonal behaviors rather than broad, independent visions. If Ketu is in the 10th house in Ashwini, their professional outlook becomes detached from specifics. They may succeed in their career without actively seeking success because they operate with a broad, almost subconscious understanding of their field. However, if Ketu is in the 4th house, their view becomes highly detailed in personal and emotional matters, making them deeply introspective and sensitive to family dynamics and inner psychological patterns. Ashwini natives naturally prefer a big picture, forward-moving perspective, but planetary placements modify whether they get lost in the details or focus purely on the larger journey. Knowing when to zoom in or zoom out is what makes them truly powerful. Ashwini Nakshatra, work preferences: together, proximity, or solo. Have you ever noticed that some people work best in a team environment, while others prefer to be near people but still work independently? And then there are those who need complete autonomy to function at their best. The way a person engages with their work environment, whether they thrive in collaboration, need some distance while still staying connected, or work best alone, is shaped by their work preference pattern. Ashwini Nakshatra, known for its quick action, self-starting energy, and leadership instinct, generally prefers freedom in their work. But planetary placements in different houses within Ashwini can refine whether they thrive in teamwork, require a degree of separation, or work best in complete isolation. If Rahu is in the 7th house in Ashwini, they are driven by collaborative partnerships, but with a strong sense of control over the dynamic. They may do exceptionally well in business deals, negotiations, or industries where their ability to charm and manipulate social dynamics gives them an edge. However, they don't want to be just another team member. They prefer to dominate the partnership, ensuring they are the key decision maker in any collaborative effort. If Rahu is in the 1st house, the opposite occurs. They reject conventional partnerships and prefer to work alone, driven by their own ambitions and unconventional career paths. They function best in high-risk, solo-driven ventures like entrepreneurship or cutting-edge industries. If Ketu is in the 10th house in Ashwini, they tend to operate best alone, detached from workplace hierarchy and expectations. They may rise to leadership positions without actively seeking them, but their work style is deeply independent and introspective. If placed in the 4th house, their work preference shifts toward proximity-based roles where they prefer working in isolation but within a familiar or comfortable setting. This could mean remote work, self-employment, or roles in research, metaphysics, or healing professions. If Venus is in the 6th house in Ashwini, they work best in social or artistic settings where teamwork and harmony are key. They enjoy proximity-based work environments, where there is continuous interaction, yet enough independence to move freely within a structured system. This placement thrives in fashion, media, public relations, or creative collaborations. However, if Venus moves to the 12th house, their work preference shifts to a more isolated, behind-the-scenes approach. They may feel drawn to spiritual, artistic, or healing professions that require solitude or silent contemplation, such as music composition, film direction, or working in retreat-like settings. If Mercury is in the 3rd house in Ashwini, they thrive in fast-paced, collaborative environments where they can engage in constant discussion, exchange of ideas, and intellectual challenges. They excel in writing, media, marketing, and roles that involve continuous communication with others. However, if Mercury moves to the 8th house, their work preference shifts toward proximity-based but confidential work. They may prefer working alone, but within environments where they must deal with highly classified or in-depth subjects, such as financial analysis, investigative journalism, or cybersecurity. If Jupiter is in the 11th house in Ashwini, they prefer working together in large network-driven settings, excelling in leadership roles, public influence, or mentorship-driven careers. They thrive in group-oriented projects that require vision, strategy, and expansive thinking. However, if Jupiter shifts to the 2nd house, their focus turns more towards solo-driven success, where they accumulate wisdom and wealth through their own efforts, often excelling in consulting, finance, education, or personal entrepreneurship. Ashwini Nakshatra naturally leans toward fast, independent work styles, but planetary placements modify whether they function best in team environments, require some distance while staying connected, or work best completely alone. Understanding their ideal workspace and energy flow can help them maximize productivity, innovation, and career satisfaction. Ashwini Nakshatra. Experience, association versus dissociation. Have you ever met someone who fully immerses themselves in every experience, reacting as if they are living the moment completely, while others seem to step back, observe, and analyze rather than feel deeply involved? The way a person experiences life, whether through direct emotional and sensory engagement, association, or detached observation, dissociation, is shaped by their cognitive processing style. Ashwini Nakshatra, known for its instinctive, action-driven nature, naturally leans toward full engagement, but planetary placements in different houses can determine whether they actively feel the moment or detach from it to see the bigger picture. If Mercury is in the 3rd house in Ashwini, experience is highly associated. They are fully present in conversations, debates, and learning experiences. They don't just process information, they engage with it, react quickly, and immerse themselves in the energy of the moment. You'll notice how they respond instantly to questions, actively participate in group discussions, and feel mentally inside the conversation rather than analyzing it from a distance. However, if Mercury is in the 9th house, their experience shifts toward dissociation. They process knowledge in a more detached philosophical way, stepping back to see larger intellectual patterns rather than getting caught in immediate reactions. If Rahu is in the 5th house in Ashwini, experience is fully immersive and exaggerated. They feel everything intensely, throwing themselves into romance, creative expression, or risk-taking without hesitation. They are so involved in their experiences that they often lose sight of logical reasoning, making them highly passionate but also prone to emotional impulsivity. If Rahu moves to the 10th house, however, their sense of self becomes externally driven, meaning they may still be deeply involved in their ambitions, but focus more on public perception, reputation, and career identity rather than internal emotional engagement. If Jupiter is in the 8th house in Ashwini, experience becomes dissociative and wisdom-oriented. They don't react emotionally to crises. They step back, observe, and seek the hidden meaning in events rather than being absorbed by them. They operate with a deep, almost subconscious detachment, processing transformation with an intellectual approach rather than through visceral engagement. If Jupiter is in the second house, this dissociation affects speech, values, and finances. They may view material wealth as something to be studied or philosophized about, rather than something to be emotionally attached to. If Ketu is in the first house in Ashwini, experience becomes highly dissociated and instinctual. They often feel like they are watching themselves go through life rather than fully living in each moment. They make rapid decisions, but may not emotionally register the experiences they go through, often feeling like they are being guided by something beyond themselves rather than through personal involvement. If Ketu is in the seventh house, this detachment applies to relationships and partnerships. They may engage in commitments without deep emotional attachment, seeing relationships as transient experiences rather than lasting emotional bonds. Ashwini Nakshatra naturally tends to act first and reflect later, but planetary placements determine whether they fully engage in experiences or detach from them to process events from a distance. Whether they are completely absorbed in the moment or observing from afar, their ability to move quickly, instinctively, and with confidence remains their greatest strength. Ashwini Nakshatra. Approach, matching versus mismatching. Have you ever noticed how some people seek patterns, similarities, and commonalities in every situation, while others immediately look for what's different, unique, or out of place? The way a person approaches problem-solving, communication, and decision-making, either by aligning with what's familiar, matching, or by focusing on distinctions, mismatching, shapes how they engage with the world. Ashwini Nakshatra, known for its quick instincts and pioneering spirit, tends to act first and analyze later. But planetary placements in different houses determine whether they align with existing structures or challenge them outright. If Mercury is in the third house in Ashwini, their approach is highly matching-oriented. They focus on connecting ideas, identifying common patterns, and adapting to conversations effortlessly. They quickly grasp similarities between different concepts and people, making them skilled communicators, negotiators, and connectors. But if Mercury shifts to the ninth house, the approach becomes more mismatching-oriented. They start challenging established ideas, questioning belief systems, and seeking alternative viewpoints, rather than simply aligning with what exists. If Rahu is in the 10th house in Ashwini, their mismatching approach is disruptive and rebellious. They don't just challenge authority, they seek to redefine leadership, career paths, and societal structures. They are driven to break conventions and stand out, often ignoring traditions in favor of radical reinvention. However, if Rahu is in the 4th house, mismatching applies more to personal identity and emotional security. They feel different from their family, reject conventional home life, and constantly seek to detach from traditional emotional conditioning. If Venus is in the 7th house in Ashwini, their approach becomes matching-focused in relationships and partnerships. They seek common ground, harmony, and shared experiences, preferring stability over unnecessary confrontation. They work best in collaborative, balanced environments where mutual understanding is prioritized. But if Venus is placed in the 12th house, the approach shifts to mismatching in relationships, meaning they may feel disconnected from conventional expressions of love, seek solitude, or gravitate toward unconventional, karmic, or spiritually detached partnerships. If Jupiter is in the 2nd house in Ashwini, their approach to knowledge and wealth is matching-oriented. They believe in following structured learning, cultural traditions, and expanding their resources through well-established methods. They trust historical wisdom, collective knowledge, and timeless principles. But if Jupiter moves to the 8th house, mismatching takes over. They reject mainstream education, challenge financial norms, and seek unconventional ways to acquire wisdom, such as esoteric studies or deep psychological analysis. If Ketu is in the 1st house in Ashwini, their mismatching approach is deeply instinctual and detached. They may feel out of sync with conventional expectations of identity, constantly redefining themselves in ways that set them apart from societal norms. If K2 is in the sixth house, mismatching applies more to daily routines, health, and work ethics. They may reject structured jobs, resist medical traditions, or have an unconventional approach to discipline and responsibility. Ashwini Nakshatra naturally prefers taking the lead without waiting for validation. But planetary influences determine whether they seek alignment with existing systems or challenge them outright, whether they match to create stability or mismatch to break new ground. Their ability to move fast, think ahead, and carve their own path remains their greatest strength. Ashwini Nakshatra, time experience in time versus through time. Have you ever met someone who lives completely in the moment, fully immersed in every experience? While others seem to step back, viewing time as a structured sequence, planning ahead with precision? The way a person experiences time, whether they live in time, fully present, acting in the now, or through time, tracking past, present, and future as a linear progression, shapes how they engage with decision-making, priorities, and their perception of life's flow. Ashwini Nakshatra, known for its quick instincts and action-first nature, naturally aligns with in-time thinking, but planetary placements on the first seventh house axis can influence whether they are fully immersed in the present or operating with long-term awareness. If Rahu is in the first house in Ashwini, their experience of time is purely in time. They act impulsively, without much concern for past consequences or future strategy. They are always chasing the next big thing, constantly moving forward, seeking excitement and innovation without pausing for reflection. If Rahu is in the seventh house, the shift toward through-time processing emerges. They begin measuring their relationships and social impact across time, becoming more aware of long-term outcomes and how others perceive them in a broader sense. They may still crave speed, but now they calculate how their actions fit into a bigger trajectory of social or professional recognition. If Ketu is in the first house in Ashwini, their time experience is paradoxical. While they act quickly and instinctively, they often feel detached from time itself, as if they are merely flowing through life without being fully rooted in the present. They move through experiences with a sense of karmic inevitability, not dwelling on the past or planning the future, but simply allowing events to unfold. If K2 is in the seventh house, their time experience becomes more through-time oriented in relationships. They may perceive partnerships as part of a karmic cycle, detached from immediate emotional involvement, but aware of long-term spiritual consequences. If Mercury is in the first house in Ashwini, their thinking remains in time, fast, and reactive, thriving in immediate discussions, quick decision-making, and short-term problem-solving. They process information in the now, making them great at spontaneous conversations, sales, and rapid intellectual exchanges. But if Mercury shifts to the seventh house, they develop a through-time awareness in social interactions, analyzing patterns in relationships, career negotiations, and strategic decision-making over time. They start anticipating outcomes rather than reacting instinctively, making them more diplomatic and measured. If Jupiter is in the first house in Ashwini, their sense of time is expansive but still largely in time. They experience life as a series of meaningful present moments, full of opportunity and learning. They thrive on instant action, trusting that wisdom will come through experience rather than pre-planning every step. If Jupiter moves to the seventh house, their perspective shifts toward through-time processing in partnerships, mentorship, and societal impact. They begin tracking long-term growth, measuring the impact of their actions over decades, rather than living purely in the now. If Venus is in the first house in Ashwini, their experience of time is sensory, pleasure-driven, and rooted in the moment. They focus on enjoying the present, immersing themselves in beauty, passion, and experiences as they unfold. Their decision-making is driven by what feels good in the now, rather than structured planning. If Venus is placed in the seventh house, this changes. They start tracking emotional bonds over time, understanding love and relationships as a continuous journey rather than a collection of isolated experiences. Their view of partnerships becomes less impulsive and more focused on long-term harmony and growth. Ashwini Nakshatra naturally leans toward in-time living, fully immersed in the now, moving with instinct, and making rapid decisions without being slowed by excessive planning. But planetary placements along the first seventh axis can introduce a more through-time awareness, shaping whether they operate purely on immediate instinct or develop a broader, more structured timeline for their actions and relationships. Whether they embrace the moment or measure their progress across time, Ashwini's strength lies in trusting their momentum, acting without hesitation, and leading the way into the unknown. Ashwini Nakshatra, primary interest motivation, people, places, activities, or things. Have you ever met someone who thrives in social settings, while others are more drawn to adventure, constant movement, or deep fascination with objects and ideas? The way a person finds motivation, through people, places, activities, or things, shapes how they engage with the world. Ashwini Nakshatra, with its fast-moving and action-first nature, is naturally drawn toward high-energy pursuits, but planetary placements in different houses determine their true driving force. If Rahu is in the 11th house in Ashwini, their motivation is people. They seek influential, unconventional individuals who can open doors to power and opportunity. They are driven by networking, social influence, and expanding their reach. But if Rahu moves to the 4th house, their focus shifts toward places. They feel restless in one location, craving movement, relocation, or a constantly changing environment that challenges their sense of stability. If Ketu is in the 1st house in Ashwini, their motivation drifts away from social interaction toward things and knowledge. They seek wisdom, abstract understanding, and hidden truths, often detached from material or social ambitions. If Ketu shifts to the 7th house, their interest in people becomes karmic and detached, making them drawn to spiritual or distant partnerships while maintaining strong independence. If Mars is in the 10th house in Ashwini, they are fueled by activity, excelling in high adrenaline, action-driven careers like entrepreneurship, military, or emergency response. If Mars moves to the 2nd house, the focus shifts to things. They become resource-driven, seeking financial security, tangible assets, and wealth-building strategies. If Mercury is in the 3rd house in Ashwini, their motivation is a mix of people and activities. They crave constant intellectual stimulation, communication, and rapid social exchanges. If Mercury moves to the 12th house, they become drawn to places and things, seeking foreign lands, secret knowledge, or hidden research, preferring solitude and behind-the-scenes work over direct interaction. If Jupiter is in the 9th house in Ashwini, they are driven by places, thriving in travel, philosophy, exploration, and expanding intellectual horizons. But if Jupiter moves to the 6th house, their motivation shifts toward activity, excelling in service, structured learning, and disciplined routines that contribute to problem-solving and teaching.